for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, February the 5th, 2026. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost. Opening with the front page, time is short for talks on Department of Homeland Security's fate. The agency faces its own shutdown deadline. Zachary Shermley of USA Today writes, "The latest government shutdown is over, and Capitol Hill is already bracing for another high-profile brawl over President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement crackdown that could land one federal agency with a shutdown all of its own." As Trump signed legislation on February the 3rd to end the partial funding lapse, all eyes in Congress turned talks to overhaul the Department of Homeland Security in the wake of Alex Preddy's killing in Minnesota in January. The constraints on how those discussions are many, but the biggest challenge may be time. Lawmakers have just over a week to come up with a compromise before a short-term funding extension for the 911 era cabinet agency expires February the 13th. In hopes of quickly placing more guardrails around ICE and Border Patrol, Democrats initially pushed for a tight turnaround on talks with the GOP and the Trump administration. But Republicans are casting doubt on whether fast-tracking the negotiation is even feasible. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, said just before the shutdown ended, the timeline for solving bipartisan concerns with DHS's operations was way too short to allow anything consequential to happen. Ultimately, that's going to be a conversation between the President of the United States and the Democrats here in the Senate, he told reporters on February 3rd. The political atmosphere stands out as a marked departure from the Washington of the past year, in which Democrats have held little leverage over a Republican-controlled Congress and a White House. But widespread backlash to the fatal shootings last month of two Minnesotans by federal agents during an immigration enforcement surge in Minneapolis enraged the Democrats' base, angered the gun lobby, and prompted unusually harsh criticism of the Trump administration from congressional Republicans. Those dynamics gave Democrats a rare upper hand, even though they chanced another prolonged shutdown to play it. With the spending impasse behind them, lawmakers now have just 10 days to figure out a path forward or risk a funding lapse for just the Department of Homeland Security. That scenario would put Democrats in an awkward position because ICE would continue operating while other important governmental functions that Americans rely on, including the Transportation Security Administration and the Coast Guard, experience lapsed paychecks for their staff and other disruptions. Congress approved $75 billion for ICE over the next several years under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act President Trump signed into law last summer. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democrat from New York, said that as long as Republicans negotiate in good faith, we can get it done. Senator Katie Britt, an Alabama Republican, will lead the discussions with her Democratic counterparts. We expect to present to the Republicans a very serious, detailed proposal very shortly, Schumer said on February 3rd. Senate Democrats have a list of three main demands for immigration enforcement. Among their asks is an end to sweeping immigration checks known as roving patrols. They also want more accountability for ICE and Border Patrol, including independent investigations and stricter use of force standards. And they want federal agents to be prohibited from wearing masks and be required to wear body cameras. Some Senate Republicans have said they're amenable to some of those requests. On February 2nd, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem ordered her officers in the field of Minneapolis to begin wearing body cameras immediately. But House Speaker Mike Johnson has ruled out any proposal that forces agents to remove their masks en masse. Doing so, the Louisiana Republican argued, would jeopardize officers' safety. I don't think the president would approve it. He shouldn't, Johnson said on Fox News. Those comments rankled some Senate Democrats, raising the likelihood that Homeland Security could shut down next week. Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, said he will not vote for any DHS funding bill unless it includes radical change. I hear Johnson saying things like he wouldn't even consider doing what every other law enforcement agency in America does, which is not masking, he said. That's not something that they're even willing to entertain.
700 immigration officers to leave Minnesota, Homan says. This article is authored by Janine Santucci of USA Today. President Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, announced a drawdown of 700 federal immigration enforcement personnel from Minnesota on February the 4th. Homan said an unprecedented amount of cooperation between local authorities and immigration and customs enforcement in the state since he was deployed there in late January has enabled the shift. Given this increase in unprecedented collaboration, and as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced, effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people effective today, he said on February the 4th. About 2,000 federal personnel will remain in the state, according to Homan. Meanwhile, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who has urged the administration to withdraw the surge of agents from the state, said Operation Metro Surge is not making Minnesota safer. Today's announcement is a step in the right direction, but we need a faster and larger drawdown of forces. State-led investigations into the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and an end to this campaign of retribution. Walz, a Democrat who ran for vice president in 2024, said this in a February the 4th social media post. Homan said local law enforcement officials have been communicating with ICE and allowing the agency to take custody of undocumented immigrants before they are released from jails. That allows for fewer officers, just one or two, to be sent to take custody in a controlled environment rather than a team sent into communities for arrest, Homan said. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. This coordination also makes it far more safe for the Twin Cities. The announcement comes after weeks of unrest in the streets of Minneapolis after two U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, were fatally shot by immigration officers. On January the 29th, Homan first announced his intention to draw down the federal presence in Minnesota, but Trump later said the administration would not at all be pulling back its deployment in the state. Thousands of federal immigration officials were deployed to Minnesota in December as part of what the administration dubbed Operation Metro Surge. Homan previously said immigration agents would be shifting their focus to targeted strategic operations, where agents would seek out known targets for arrest with a focus on those deemed public safety threats. He said it's the same approach ICE has taken for decades. Still, Homan said anyone in the country illegally is at risk for deportation and not off the table. Let me be clear. President Trump fully intends to achieve mass deportations during this administration, and immigration enforcement actions will continue every day throughout this country. President Trump made a promise, and we have not directed otherwise. he said. Holman said protesters have been setting up roadblocks on the streets in an attempt to impede immigration officers, and said in a message to them, "You're not going to stop ICE." The 700 officials leaving Minnesota will not include personnel providing security for officers and responding to hostile incidents, Holman said. Holman said the administration's goal is to return Minnesota to the same footprint of ICE operations it had before Operation Metro Surge. A complete drawdown is going to depend on continued cooperation of local and state law enforcement and the decrease of the violence, the rhetoric, and the attacks against ICE and Border Patrol, according to Holman. Also on February the 4th, DHS Secretary Noem spoke on the president's immigration agenda in a news conference at the southern border, calling it the most secure border in history. She said January 2026 was the fourth straight month of decline in apprehensions at the southwest border, at just over 6,000.
Why does the president's name seem ubiquitous? Fancy word for everywhere. Trump's push of brand stands out in history. Trevor Hughes pens this article. President Donald Trump's recent joking suggestion that he'd rename the Gulf of Mexico to honor himself highlights a growing trend. The president and his supporters envision putting his name on everything, from phones to performing arts centers, stadiums, airports, roads, whiskey glasses, bathrobes. Societies have always used street and place names to signal values, from the towns called Hope to Martin Luther King Jr. and Ronald Reagan boulevards, the Robert F. Kennedy Stadium, and even the nation's capital itself, Washington, named in 1791 to honor the nation's then president. The colony of Jamestown honored Britain's King James I, and Louisiana was named after King Louis XIV of France. But the current president's willingness to push his own personal brand and the willingness of others to help him do it stands out in modern history, according to people who study naming. It's usually best practice to wait until somebody dies, said Reuben Rose Redwood, a geography professor at Canada's University of Victoria, an international expert on how place names shape perception. I've never seen this kind of scale to rename places after a living person in the way we are seeing it over President Trump. The scale of it is unprecedented in modern times. Now, history is replete with examples of leaders naming communities, streets, or buildings in their honor, including Soviet leaders Stalin and Lenin, who gave us Stalingrad and Leningrad. Hitler named multiple places in Berlin for himself, although his name was scrubbed from the city at the end of World War II. The rise and falls of regimes are often accompanied by name changes, Rose Redwood said. What I'm seeing in the United States is this combination of crass commercialization and a cult of personality around an authoritarian leader who treats the government and its assets as the personal property of the president himself. Rose Redwood said, "There's a phrase for the concept, toponymic narcissism." Trump has long used his name as the cornerstone of his real estate empire's branding, giving the world Trump Steaks, Trump Vodka, Trump University, and the Trump Taj Mahal Casino. There's also Trump mobile phones, the Trump Gold Card for wealthy immigrants, and the cryptocurrency Trump Coin. In his second term, Trump has also added his name to the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and to the United States Institute of Peace. ESPN reported that Trump has also been pushing the Washington Commanders football team to name their new stadium in his honor. January 20th, as he marked the end of his first year back in office, Trump said he'd rejected naming the Gulf after himself, but mused aloud about the idea. The Gulf of Trump. That does have a good ring, though. Maybe we could do that. It's not too late. Many of Trump's supporters have backed efforts to name things after him. In Kentucky, state lawmakers are considering a plan to rename 12 miles of Kentucky Route 18 between Florence to Rabbit Hash in Boone County in the president's honor. In Florida, officials in December renamed a 4-mile stretch of Southern Boulevard near the president's Mar-a-Lago Golf Club to the President Donald J. Trump Boulevard. In Ohio, Republican lawmakers have proposed naming a 2-mile stretch of Interstate 70 in Columbus as the President Donald Trump Freedom Highway. Republicans in Congress have proposed renaming Washington Dulles International Airport as the Donald J. Trump International Airport. In each of these cases, the sponsor said Trump deserves recognition for his success on behalf of the American people. We have entered the golden age of America largely thanks to President Trump's leadership. This from Representative Addison McDowell, a North Carolina Republican, as he said in announcing the Dulles renaming plan. It's only right that the 2 airports servicing our nation's capital are duly honored and respected by 2 of the best presidents to have the honor of serving our great nation. Place naming expert Derek H. Alderman, a chancellor's professor at the University of Tennessee, said the push to name places for Trump evokes the ancient practice of paying tribute, in which members of a certain class attempt to ingratiate themselves into a powerful lord's good graces. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:16. Now, to continue, that's exactly or absolutely what we're seeing in terms of some of this naming, said Alderman, who served on the Federal Advisory Committee on Reconciliation and Place Names during the Biden administration. Alderman said there's a large picture, too. The desire by some conservatives to take back the process by which places are named or renamed. For instance, the Biden era committee on which Alderman served was assembled to help rename geographic features with names considered offensive by Native Americans, similarly to how Congress in 2020 ordered the renaming of about a dozen Army bases honoring Confederate military leaders. While the base renaming process took years and included thousands of hours of public testimony and community engagement, Trump, upon taking office in 2025, ordered them changed back to the originals. Trump also ordered that Denali, the nation's tallest mountain, be once again referred to as Mount McKinley. President Obama had changed the name in 2015, following decades of requests from Alaska officials, some of whom objected to Trump changing the name back last year. Like the Gulf of America, Trump called for Denali's name to be changed without seeking substantive public input. Alderman said MAGA supporters appear to have decided that naming things for Trump is a way to solve 2 problems. People know that paying tribute to Trump is a way of keeping him happy, basically stroking his ego. But we're also in the middle of a political realignment by the right to push back on the movement toward more progressive symbols, Alderman said. This is their attempt to counter that reform movement. Now, Rose Redwood added, the irony here is that Trump himself was very much against removing Confederate place names and statues over this idea of erasing history. But at the same time, renaming the Gulf of Mexico is somehow not erasing history. Meanwhile, Senator Bernie Sanders, the Vermont Independent, has proposed a federal law that would ban naming federal buildings after sitting presidents. Sanders' proposal, called the Stop Executive Renaming for Vanity and Ego Act, would retroactively apply to any federal facilities that have already been tagged with Trump's name. Sanders said naming the buildings after current leaders evokes authoritarian regimes from history. For Trump to put his name on federal buildings is arrogant and it is illegal, Sanders said in a statement. We must put an end to this narcissism, and that's what this bill does.
Latest Epstein files reveal a wider circle. Notable and wealthy people stayed in his orbit. From Aaron Mansfield, Catherine Palmer, and Jamie Fraser of USA Today. The latest batch of documents released from the Jeffrey Epstein files reveals new people who corresponded with the late wealth manager, many in the years after he became a registered sex offender. The new figures include a former U.S. senator, a Norwegian princess, a NASCAR driver, and several wealthy men who did business with Epstein. None have been charged with crimes, and their participation in Epstein's orbit in some cases simply indicates they had social or business connections with him. While Epstein was known as a money manager, various batches of emails show he cultivated relationships with powerful people, including presidents, prime ministers, wealthy investors, and celebrities. Epstein pleaded guilty in Florida in 2008 to one count of procuring a child for prostitution and one count of soliciting prostitution, charges that required him to register as a sex offender. Many of his contacts maintained relationships for years after his guilty plea. Epstein was arrested in New York on federal sex trafficking charges in 2019, but died by suicide while awaiting trial. Here are some names that emerged in this document release, and additional information about some of Epstein's previously known contacts. First, Elon Musk. The billionaire tech entrepreneur and former Department of Government Efficiency head had multiple conversations with Epstein about visiting Little St. James, the private island where Epstein has been accused of trafficking and assaulting women, but Musk has denied making the trip. In 2013, the two men exchanged emails about Musk visiting Epstein's island over the holidays, while Musk would be nearby in the Caribbean. The two bounced around dates in the conversation, and it is unclear whether Musk made the trips. Epstein's schedule for December 6, 2014 says, reminder, Elon Musk to island on December the 6th. Is this still happening? Musk has denied ever visiting Epstein's island and told Vanity Fair in 2019 he rejected Epstein's attempts to invite him to the island. A representative of Musk did not respond to a request for comment from USA Today upon the latest document release. Next, Princess Mette Marit. Epstein had dozens of email exchanges with Mette Marit, the Crown Princess of Norway, as recently as 2014. The emails contradict a 2019 comment from the Royal Palace that she broke off contact with Epstein in 2011, according to the Norwegian tabloid VG. I must take responsibility for not having investigated Epstein's background more thoroughly and for not realizing sooner what kind of person he was, Mette Marit said in a statement January 31st. I deeply regret this, and it is a responsibility I must bear. I showed poor judgment and regret having had any contact with Epstein at all. It is simply embarrassing. In a 2013 email, an assistant to Epstein, whose name is redacted in the files, asks Princess Mette if she can meet with Epstein at 9 East 71st Street. Years later, in 2019, federal prosecutors cited this address as a location where Epstein hosted guests and abused minor girls. Thanks, I will try, Mette Marit responded. I am emailing directly with Jeffrey. Next is Senator George Mitchell. Former Senator George Mitchell, a Democrat who represented Maine in the 1980s and 90s and went on to become a U.S. ambassador, is mentioned dozens of times in emails between 2010 and 15, often arranging meetings or passing on his contact information. In 2011, Epstein wrote to Sultan Ahmad bin Sulayem, a Dubai business associate of Epstein's. George Mitchell is my very close friend and chairman of Piper, a reference to a law firm. In 2015, an unnamed assistant to Epstein emailed Mitchell to invite him to a meeting with Epstein, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and a Norwegian diplomat. Epstein accuser Virginia Roberts Gaffer said in a 2016 deposition released in 2019 that she was forced to have sex with Mitchell, but Mitchell denied the allegation. Mitchell, now 92, has not been charged with any crimes related to Epstein. His representatives told the BBC this week that he'd never met, spoken to, or had any contact with the late Roberts, Gaffer, or any underage girls. Queen University's Belfast, where Mitchell served as a chancellor from 1999 to 2009, announced February 3rd that it would remove Mitchell's name from his Institute for Global Peace, Security, and Justice, and also remove a bust of him. A U.S.-Irish nonprofit announced February the 2nd it would remove his name from a scholarship program. While no findings of wrongdoing by Senator Mitchell have been made, the university has concluded that, in light of this material and mindful of the experiences of victims and survivors, it is no longer appropriate for its institutional spaces and entities to continue to bear his name, according to the university. USA Today reached out to Mitchell's eponymous nonprofit for comment. Next is Andrew Farkas. The real estate mogul Andrew Farkas, whom media reports show co-owned a marina with Epstein in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, corresponded with Epstein for at least a decade, between 2009 and 2019, well after Epstein's 2008 conviction that made him mandated that he register for life as a sex offender. The two exchanged book recommendations, coordinated visits and phone calls, shared brief updates about their schedules, and spoke about life and business dealings. On December 30th of 2010, Farkas wrote to Epstein to tell him, "You are one of the blessings in my life, and I cherish our friendship." In a 2011 exchange, Farkas thanked Epstein for helping Jonathan, the name of his son, who appeared in other Epstein file releases, and Farkas signed the message XOXO. In another message from June of 2010, Farkas complained about the lack of parties with hot women at the Montreal Grand Prix, prompting Epstein to respond using derogatory language about women and say that the whining of women in engines is what makes it okay for 10 minutes. Farkas and his company did not immediately respond to a USA Today request for comment. Peter Attia, an author and anti-aging influencer recently hired as a CBS News contributor, was mentioned more than 1,700 times in the new release of files. In emails from 2015 through 18, Attia and Epstein often exchanged crude jokes and sometimes discussed health issues. Attia told Epstein that performing oral sex on women was low carb, and in emails with the subject line, "Got a fresh shipment," Attia told Epstein, "You know, the biggest problem with becoming friends with you, the life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul." In a social media post on X on February the 2nd, Attia described that exchange as starting when he shared a photo of a prescription medication he had picked up from the pharmacy, and Epstein replied with a photograph of an adult woman. Neither image is included in the files released by federal officials. "Reading that exchange now is very embarrassing, and I will not defend it," Attia wrote. "I'm ashamed of myself for everything about this." He added that he did not participate in any criminal activity and that he was never on his plane, never on his island, and never present at any sex parties. In the wake of the emails being released, Attia stepped down from his role as chief science officer at David Protein, a snack bar company. USA Today reached out to Attia for comment. Brian Vickers.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 12:29.
Continuing, the former NASCAR driver Brian Vickers emailed Epstein in March of 2012 with a message that begins like a children's fairy tale. But when a princess rejects a prince's proposal, the story pivots to sexually explicit material. A 2013 email exchange suggests Epstein was trying to help Vickers retain his sponsors. In a 2019 email, Vickers shared a video with Epstein over email. The subject line said, Thought you would like this. And the message said, Happy Valentine's, buddy. Epstein was charged with sex trafficking months later in July of 2019. Vickers was married to Sarah Kellen until 2025. Authorities accused Kellen of scheduling Epstein's interactions with young girls under the guise of massages in the mid-2000s, but she has since called herself a victim. Other Epstein survivors have said he asked them to recruit others for so-called massages. USA Today reached out to Vickers' representatives for comment. And finally, Leon Black. The documents provide more context on the relationship between Epstein and billionaire Leon Black, who has said in the past that he had a strictly professional relationship with the sex offender. Black's lawyer is denying wrongdoing on his behalf. Emails show Epstein's associates arranging meetings between the two from 2010 to 17. The person sending the email is often redacted, but in some cases the name Leslie Groff is unredacted. Groff was one of Epstein's associates. Black himself is not copied on the emails reviewed by USA Today. Black also was mentioned in an email thread between FBI employees with the subject line regarding Epstein, cellmate, interview. The email says someone stated Epstein told her to give Black a massage while Black was naked, and that someone stated another female gave Black a massage and he made her perform oral sex. The names of the accuser or accusers are redacted. According to Reuters, Black has faced multiple lawsuits alleging he raped women and girls, including an autistic teen who said he attacked her during a massage at Epstein's home. That case is ongoing. 2 other suits have been withdrawn or dismissed with prejudice. Susan Estrich, Black's lawyer, told The Guardian, Mr. Black asked for an independent investigation of his relationship with Epstein. The Dechert law firm investigated and reviewed more than 60,000 documents, interviewed more than 20 people, and concluded that Mr. Black paid Epstein for estate planning and tax advice, and that he had no awareness of Epstein's criminal activities.
Hegseth visits Bezos. Musk cites as moguls win contracts. A space firm gets cozy with the Trump administration. Sybil Mays Osterman of USA Today writes, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth traveled to one of Jeff Bezos' space facilities in Florida on February the 2nd as the military awards contracts to the owner of Blue Origin and other tech billionaires who have worked to burnish a chummy relationship with the Trump administration. Hegseth's visit was part of his Arsenal of Freedom speaking tour in his campaign to overhaul the Pentagon's relationship with the Defense Industrial Base. It's a system basically for handing out contracts to build weapons. We will unleash our companies, unleash industry, unleash the competitive spirit that allows America to come out on top, Hegseth told the crowd. No more business as usual, which I know, Mr. Bezos, is music to your ears, he said. Bezos' Blue Origin has become famous for offering pay-to-ride trips to space for ultra-wealthy customers. But the company also has received billions of dollars in defense contracts to build high-tech projects such as nuclear-powered spacecraft, communication technology that uses space lasers, and a processing facility for satellites. The Pentagon and Blue Origin did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Hegseth's tour also included a January 12 stop at a Texas facility of SpaceX, owned in large part by billionaire Elon Musk, who has played an even larger role in the Trump administration as its former head of the Department of Government Efficiency. At Musk's direction, Doge took an axe to the federal government in early 2025, wiping out thousands of jobs and entire agencies. We want to have epic, futuristic spaceships with lots of people in them, traveling to places we've never been to before, Musk said, as he introduced Hegseth on stage. That's the goal. And that's what I think the public thinks of when they think of Space Force, he added, touting the military's space-focused branch. Hegseth also announced that Grok, the chatbot run by X, the social media platform largely owned and controlled by Musk, would be integrated into internal Pentagon systems. The AI chatbot has been embroiled in controversy over accusations it generated sexualized images of children on X. Now, Bezos and Musk, who both stand to profit handsomely from contracts worth billions of dollars, are among the tech tycoons who sidled up to Trump after he was elected to a second term. Both billionaires repeatedly rushed to Mar-a-Lago to dine with Trump weeks before his inauguration, and Amazon, of which Bezos is the largest shareholder, donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund. After news outlets reported in April that Amazon would display the additional cost that Trump's tariffs added to prices on its site, Trump called Bezos. Amazon quickly backed down. Greg Williams, director of the Project on Government Oversight Center for Defense Information, said that the conflict of interest concerns precipitated by Hegseth's speeches at SpaceX and Blue Origin were not particularly novel, and that the risk of corruption in the Pentagon's dealings with defense contractors was structural and unavoidable. Yet his presence is calling attention to a situation of unprecedented conflict of interest in the Trump administration, according to Williams. Trump and his team have come to be under scrutiny over their refusal to divest from for-profit companies and lucrative backdoor deals with foreign officials. The Wall Street Journal reported in recent days that Emirati officials bought a large stake in Trump's cryptocurrency company shortly before the administration granted the United Arab Emirates coveted American AI chips. In the Pentagon, many individual stakeholders and private entities are cultivating personal relationships with the president while they seek government contracts, according to Williams. Amazon recently bought the rights to Melania, the newly released documentary about the First Lady, Melania Trump, nearly $40 million, making it the most expensive documentary in history. A reported $35 million was spent on a promotion for the film, raising questions about whether the hefty sum was an attempt by Bezos and his company to curry favor with the president. By spending a tiny amount of money to buy the rights to the Melania documentary, Bezos potentially gets a much larger return in the form of Blue Origin's billions of dollars in defense contracts and other possible government windfalls, Williams said. Now, Musk's SpaceX will see even more money pour in from defense contracts this year. 3 days before Hegseth's visit to SpaceX, the Military Space Systems Command announced it had awarded the company another $739 million for missile warning and tracking systems. The company already had clinched the vast majority of launch contracts from Space Force for this year. It won a $5.9 billion contract in April for Space Force launches through 2029. And Blue Origin, by the way, won $2.3 billion in the same tranche. Musk's companies have been bolstered by about $38 billion in government contracts and subsidies, according to the Washington Post. The full scope of Bezos and Musk's defense contracts is actually unknown because some of the deals are classified.
Turning to page 2, police. No sign of Guthrie's mom. Blood found at house. Ransom notes reported. From Taiwan Mormon and Brendan Morrow of USA Today. As the investigation into the disappearance of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother stretched into a fourth day, new details emerged and authorities pleaded with the public for information. CBS affiliate KOLD news and tabloid entertainment website TMZ reported their newsrooms each received a ransom note, which authorities considered unverified, as the FBI worked with local Arizona law enforcement and other agencies on the search. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said February the 4th that investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest in the case and urged the public to not spread information suggesting otherwise. Detectives continue to speak with anyone who may have had contact with Mrs. Guthrie, the Sheriff's Department said in a statement. Detectives are working closely with the Guthrie family. While we appreciate the public's concern, the sharing of unverified accusations or false information is irresponsible and does not assist the investigation. Authorities are offering a reward of up to $2,500. Anyone with information is urged to call the Sheriff's Department 520-351-4900. Nancy Guthrie, who has limited mobility, was last seen January 31st at her home north of Tucson. Pima County officials said her health was in danger after several days without vital medicine. There were security cameras at her home, police said, but it wasn't immediately clear how many were there or were recording at the time of her disappearance. When Clara Magoya and Richard Rulius, reporters for the Arizona Republic, part of the USA Today network, visited Nancy Guthrie's home on February 3rd, they saw dried blood droplets on the Spanish tile entrance. The Sheriff's Department did not immediately confirm whose blood it was. Rulius and Magoya noted there was no yellow tape surrounding the home, and authorities have turned the house over to Guthrie's family. Detectives collected DNA samples at Guthrie's home, but several other samples were still out for testing. Pima County authorities have said they were still working through hundreds of tips with the FBI. We are taking all tips and leads very seriously, a statement from the Sheriff's Department read. Liz Kreutz, an NBC News correspondent, said on Today that a candlelight service was planned February 4th at an Arizona church. There is so much support for them here in the community, she added. Savannah Guthrie's co-anchors on Today shared their support on the morning show, discussing the journalist and her mother's close-knit bond that has been strengthened by their unwavering faith that's carried their family through difficult times, said Jenna Bush Hager. John Edwards, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's office in Tucson, joined Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos at a news conference February the 3rd and said the FBI is helping the Sheriff's Department with downloading and analyzing cell phones, obtaining cell tower information, conducting interviews, and providing additional investigative support. We are looking at this from every angle, but we need your help, he said.
And a little bit on the lighter side, Henderson, Iowa's Phipps is America's youngest mayor, an online college student. Jay Stahl of USA Today writes a short article. In Henderson, Iowa, population 144. Everybody knows everybody. In March, residents hold an annual nut fry at the firehouse, and it's advertised as the Testicle Festival. And last November, residents elected Eva Phipps, a 20-year-old who's America's youngest serving mayor. Phipps also says she's the youngest female mayor in U.S. history. I didn't think I'd be making American history. I thought I'd just be running my little town. But I'm so proud of myself for not getting bogged down, not getting overwhelmed with it, Phipps told USA Today. The online college student won her election by 24 percentage points, defeating her 45-year-old opponent, a truck driver named Scott Schondelmeyer, with 31 votes to his 19. Her victory is part of a national trend for Gen Z. She's among a slew of newly elected or appointed mayors across the U.S. who are in their 20s, including Garden City, Kansas's 22-year-old leader, and Carnegie, Pennsylvania's 24-year-old mayor. Mayoral races, typically nonpartisan in many small or mid-sized municipalities, have shifted in the wake of America's outcry for generational change in politics. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time, 12:45. Continuing. Likely the most prominent of the bunch, New York City's Zohran Mamdani, age 34, grabbed loads of national attention during his long-shot bid to lead America's largest city. When Phipps was growing up in New York State, her parents split. Her dad, a U.S. Army veteran, eventually moved back to his native Iowa. He moved to Henderson, a small town near his hometown of Council Bluffs, which sits across the Mississippi River from Omaha. Her dad wanted somewhere in the country, away from the hustle and bustle of the bigger city, where he'd grown up. Henderson has no diner and no stoplights, but about 4 or 5 stop signs, and the nearest gas station is 20 minutes away. We used to have 3 churches, Phipps said. We're down to 1 now. When her dad moved to the Midwest in 2018, Phipps remained in Weedsport, New York, with her mom. But she visited her dad frequently in his new home. They found a house with enough bedrooms for family members' visits, but they had few neighbors. Then, when the COVID pandemic complicated travel in April of 2020, Phipps was stuck in Iowa over the summer, and she hatched a plan. She convinced her mom to let her move out to Iowa for high school. And I've been out here pretty much ever since, Phipps said. Folks are kinder in flyover country, Phipps added, and the educational opportunities were more plentiful. I fell in love with it, Phipps said. She attended the highly ranked Trainer High School and obtained her associate's degree from Iowa Western Community College in 2023 before graduating from high school in 2024. Later that year, back in New York, Phipps's stepdad, a local businessman who mentored and guided her, died from a sudden illness on Christmas Eve, which prompted her to step up and help Henderson. Phipps had greatly admired her stepdad, who taught her that we work hard for what we have, what we want, and what we need, but we still help others to the best of our ability. Now, Phipps decided to run for office the following October, and she landed the victory less than a month later. She said she's a natural fit because I love talking to people. And she's been talking with residents about their concerns, readying celebrations for America's 250th birthday, and working on building in accessible playgrounds. Phipps said that the nearest place for kids to play is over 50 miles from Henderson. The rundown one in town, which sits off the city's main drag, includes a carousel, 2 swings, where there used to be 4, a climbing net, and a slide. Getting kids outside is hard enough, let alone when you make it nearly impossible for some kids. Phipps aims to have the playground completed by the time her 2-year term ends. On the 3rd Tuesday every month, she joins other local ladies to drink coffee, gather, and gab about the latest happenings at Henderson City Hall. She wants to finish college at Western Governors University. Her studies at the online university are self-paced. After that, she plans to apply to law school at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Phipps wants to honor her stepdad the right way. I just hope he's really proud, Phipps said. He's been a huge inspiration.
Turning to the money section of USA Today, corporate earnings appear on the rise. Quarterly profits could set record, according to this report from Andrea Require of USA Today. Large American companies may be on track to report the highest profits in more than 15 years, according to an analysis published on January the 30th. With 1/3 of companies represented in the S&P 500 having reported their quarterly earnings so far, the average net profit margin is 13.2%, according to the report by John Butters, data provider, FactSet's senior earnings analyst. If the actual net profit margin for the quarter winds up being 13.2% when all companies are finished reporting, it will be the highest on record, back to 2009 when FactSet started tracking the metric. Net profit margin is just one way of slicing and dicing all the data that accompanies earnings, of course, and some other measurements are a bit less positive, Butters pointed out. For example, of 11 S&P 500 sectors groupings of stocks according to industry and function, 3 are reporting an increase in net profits margin in the final 3 months of last year compared with the fourth quarter of 2024. But 8 are reporting a decrease in net profit margins in the same time period. Still, given the headwinds from tariffs and other policy uncertainties, companies are doing well, Butters wrote. It is interesting to note that analysts believe net profit margins for the S&P 500 will be even higher in 2026, he added. As of today, the estimated net profit margins for the first quarter of this year through a quarter 4 of 2026 are 13.2%, 13.8%, 14.2%, and 14.2% respectively. As previously reported, analysts believe U.S. stocks will end 2026 higher, although they differ on how much higher. In December, Deutsche Bank strategists forecast an 18% increase for the S&P 500. LPL Financial, meanwhile, forecast about an 8% increase. Despite higher tariffs, corporate earnings are being buoyed by a rush to capitalize on artificial intelligence technology, as well as tax cuts passed last year.
Disney taps the parks boss tomorrow to lead company. Eve Chen, Nathan Diller co-write the article. The Walt Disney Company announced that Josh D'Amaro will become its next CEO on March 18, succeeding Bob Iger and ending years of succession speculation. D'Amaro, who has led Disney's Experiences division since 2020, becomes the second parks chief to rise to the top role. Disney Entertainment co-chair Dana Walden will take on a newly created role as President and Chief Creative Officer. Iger will remain a senior advisor and board member through the end of his contract. Now, Josh D'Amaro possesses that rare combination of inspiring leadership and innovation, a keen eye for strategic growth opportunities, and a deep passion for the Disney brand and its people, all of which make him the right person to take the helm as Disney's next CEO. James Gorman, chairman of the Walt Disney Company Board of Directors, said in a news release. Now, throughout this search process, Josh has demonstrated a strong vision for the company's future and deep understanding of the creative spirit that makes Disney unique in an ever-changing marketplace. The last parks chief to become Disney CEO was Bob Chapek. He ran the company through the pandemic and a high-profile fight over what critics called Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, before Iger returned to retake the role in 2022. Chapek only oversaw parks a handful of years before becoming CEO. So, what do you want to know about Josh D'Amaro? He started his Disney career at Disneyland in 1998, went on to serve as the parks president, and then Walt Disney World's president before chairing Disney Experiences. He still calls himself a cast member, like those reporting to him. In his latest role, he's overseen Disney parks worldwide, including plans for a new park in Abu Dhabi, announced last year. His purview also includes Disney consumer products, Walt Disney Imagineering, and Disney Signatures Experiences, which encompass Disney Cruise Line, Disney Vacation Club, Adventures by Disney, Story Living by Disney, and more. Now, Disney notes that he's also led teams in finance, business strategy, marketing, creative development, and operations. What his resume doesn't show, however, is how he connects with cast members and guests, as USA Today has witnessed on multiple occasions. He has a way of making them feel seen and heard, even amid price increases, attraction closures, and other changes fans don't always welcome with the same gusto as his parks-related announcements from 2024's D23, the ultimate Disney fan event. We have cast members all across this company, including me, who care very much about making sure that we find a balance between pushing the boundaries on what is new and also preserving the legacy and memory that so many of our fans have here in the parks, he told USA Today at the time. He said he wants to hear from guests and showed how at a Make-A-Wish event at Disneyland's Star Wars Galaxy's Edge that same year. DeMauro serves on the national board of Make-A-Wish. His niece has a Wish Kid herself, and Disney is the largest single Wish grantor in the world. But as he crouched down to speak to Wish families and listen to their stories one-on-one that night, his attention was squarely focused on them. Walking through the park later, he was repeatedly stopped by guests who just wanted to say hi or snap a selfie. He welcomed each one with a warm smile and an open ear. All along the way, he also thanked cast members, taking time to ask them about their roles and their days, as if he had all the time in the world. Disney's strength has always come from our people and the creative excellence that defines our stories and experiences, DeMauro said in the news release announcing his new role. There is no limit to what Disney can achieve, and I am excited to work with our teams across the company and the brilliant creative partners to honor Disney's remarkable legacy while continuing to innovate, grow, and deliver exceptional value for our customers and our shareholders.
SiriusXM agrees to pay $28 million settlement from James Powell of USA Today. SiriusXM is set to pay millions to settle a lawsuit claiming the company repeatedly called people who were on Do Not Call lists. The 2022 lawsuit claimed that people who had entered their names on the National Do Not Call registry or told the satellite radio company not to call them were contacted after doing so. The registry, available for free, allows the public to opt out of telemarketing calls and report violations to the Federal Trade Commission. SiriusXM denied wrongdoing in the agreement, but agreed to a $28 million settlement, originally filed in October of 2025 to settle the claims. Here's what's to know about the SiriusXM settlement. When is the deadline to make a claim in the SiriusXM settlement? The deadline to file a claim is March 21st, while the deadline to file an objection to the settlement is March 27th. A final approval hearing, where the court may hear objections to the settlement, is set for May the 11th. And how do I qualify to make a claim? People who were contacted more than once by SiriusXM from April 27th, 2019 to October 31st of last year can qualify if they were not a SiriusXM subscriber and had been on the National Do Not Call registry for at least 31 days, and that they were asked to be placed on SiriusXM internal Do Not Call list, but still received a call after the request. And finally, how to file a claim in the SiriusXM settlement. Claims can be filed on the SiriusXM settlement website.
You've been listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, February the 5th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Ken Drost.
and Jim Duffy. And moving on to our sports page. The team working to catch drug cheaters. Agency 800 strong set for the Milan Cortina games from Josh Peter of USA Today. Athletes using banned drugs or violating other anti-doping rules at the 2026 Winter Olympics will face a formidable team trained to catch them. The International Testing Agency, which is ITA, which oversees drug testing at the Olympics, arrives at the Milano Cortina Games with a contingent of about 800 people. That includes 20 people to oversee the operation, 150 doping control officers, and hundreds of people to chaperone the athletes to doping control stations, according to the ITA. The ITA also plans to collaborate with Italian police and conduct 2,200 drug tests, which involves collecting samples of urine and blood. The program got underway January 30th when the Olympic villages that house the athletes opened. And ITA will be testing for substances on the World Anti-Doping Agency, which is WADA, prohibited list. The anti-doping program in itself is a deterrent factor, an ITA spokesperson told USA Today Sports, on the condition the quotes he attributed to the organization, a non-profit based in Switzerland. If you know you're going to meet a police officer, you don't drunk drive to get there and present yourself drunk in front of that person. The fact is that you can get caught cheating a lot higher than not at the Olympics. Selected by the International Olympic Committee, which is IOC, the ITA took over the anti-doping program at the 2018 Winter Olympics. The number of positive doping tests has steadily dropped from 132 at the 2012 Summer Olympics to 55 at the 2014 Winter Olympics, to 16 at the 2016 Summer Olympics, and to 4 at the 2018 Winter Olympics, according to Statista. The ITA reported 6 anti-doping rule violations at the 2021 Summer Olympics and 4 at the 2022 Winter Olympics and 5 at the 2024 Summer Olympics. Every Olympian winning a medal at the Milano Cortina Games will be drug tested. That will require about 350 drug tests, which leaves 1,850 drug tests, about 700 fewer than necessary, to test all of the Olympians at least once. Citing limited funds, the ITA said it focuses on targeted testing. That means allocating more resources to high-risk sports in which data shows doping is more common. At the Winter Olympics, that would be in endurance sports such as biathlon and cross-country, according to the ITA, which said low-risk sports include team sports. Risk assessment also takes into account participating countries and, among other factors, a country's history of doping, testing statistics, and intelligence received, according to the ITA. This risk assessment is a very fine-tuned instrument that the ITA has developed and serves as an indicator to target higher risk sports and countries, the group says on its website. Research studies and experience have helped change the approach to drug testing, according to the ITA. It has evolved from running after the cheaters to trying to anticipate more, having long-term tool, the ITA said. For example, the ITA can conduct reanalysis of testing samples for up to 10 years, potentially uncovering doping violations with more sophisticated testing tools than were available at the time the samples were collected. A reanalysis of testing samples from the 2012 Olympics led to the discovery of 73 doping violations and the reallocation of 46 medals. A reanalysis of testing samples from the 2016 Olympics uncovered 7 cases of doping, but only 1 medalist. That doesn't mean that we eradicate doping as much as police can't eradicate any criminal behavior, but it has professionalized massively, the ITA said. Doping by athletes is a crime under the Italian Criminal Code. The crime carries a maximum prison sentence of 3 years and a fine of up to about $60,000. During the Winter Olympics, the ITA will exchange information with the police. We don't have the same capacities to act as law enforcement does, so we need to share information mutually, the ITA said. The police don't do anti-doping testing, and we don't do search, for instance. We have to exchange information to be able to use our respective capacities as best we can. Italian courts have shown a willingness to enforce the law, such as a case in 2017. Michelle Ferrari, a doctor involved with biathlete Daniel Taschler in the banned practice of blood-boosting EPO, was handed an 18-month suspended prison sentence, fined about $5,500, and banned from working as a physician or a trainer for 18 months. Taschler was handed a suspended prison sentence of 9 months and fined about $4,300. Gottlieb Taschler, Daniel's father, who arranged the collaboration between Ferrari and his son, was handed a suspended prison sentence of 1 year and fined $4,800. At the time, Gottlieb Taschler was vice president for sport of the International Biathlon Union. Drug tests are not the only tool used by the ITA to stop athletes from doping. The ITA said it employs former policemen to help gather intelligence. Authorities share information across borders, and there's the use of biological passports, which, according to WADA, monitors selected biological variables over time that indirectly reveal the effects of doping rather than attempting to detect the doping substance or method itself. Data is used to determine how best to allocate the drug tests, according to the ITA. I think data is going to be the future of anti-doping testing more and more, the ITA said, comparing anti-doping to the Matrix.
Eligibility is a real threat to college sports. Quarterback Joey Aguilar is suing to gain an 8th season. Columnist Blake Topmeyer is responsible for the following. A college football quarterback is suing the NCAA because the association's rules will not allow him to be an 8th-year senior quarterback. Yeah, you read that correctly. Joey Aguilar wants to play as an 8th-year senior. He'll celebrate his 25th birthday in June. 3 months later, he'd like to start as Tennessee's quarterback because, hey, getting paid $2 million to be a college quarterback has to sound a whole lot better than leaving college and getting a job in the real world. Aguilar, though, encountered a snafu. The mean old NCAA doesn't want to let him pursue his dream of being an 8th-year senior quarterback. So, Aguilar honored a modern rite of passage for college athletes. He lawyered up. Now a judge in Knoxville, Tennessee, will have an influential voice in determining the Vols' starting quarterback for the 2026 season. When an athlete sues the NCAA because it won't allow him to embark upon an 8th college season, and when a local judge gets to shape his alma mater's quarterback's competition, I think we've officially jumped the shark. The NCAA has a growing problem, folks. It's not name, image, or likeness. NIL is a scapegoat. It's not a major issue within college sports. The big problem isn't even the transfer portal. The real threat to the NCAA, on display again in Aguilar's suit, is the association's constant struggle to enforce its eligibility rules. The NCAA spent years groveling to DC's lawmakers in hopes of achieving some self-serving NIL legislation. Those lobbying efforts achieved bupkis. The federal lawmakers drum up various versions of partisan NIL legislation, but it never leaves the chute. What a waste of time and money. Instead of focusing on an NIL bailout that never materializes, the NCAA would have been smarter to lobby for narrowly tailored bipartisan legislation allowing it to enforce its eligibility rules. In the meantime, the NCAA faces an onslaught of eligibility lawsuits heard by local judges who support the home team. An Alabama judge who's listed as a Crimson Tide Athletics donor awarded a temporary ruling allowing professional basketball star Charles Bediako to suit up for the Tide. In a Mississippi court, Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambly is suing the NCAA in pursuit of a 6th year of eligibility on medical redshirt grounds. In federal court, former Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia is suing the NCAA on grounds similar to Aguilar's case, seeking to gain a longer NCAA eligibility runway for junior college transfers. It's not that the NCAA lacks rules. It's got hundreds of pages of rules to which its member universities agree. It just cannot effectively enforce those rules. Whenever a rule negatively affects a particular university or an athlete, somebody dials 1-800-lawsuit, and then after the NCAA gets its teeth knocked out for the umpteenth time, member institutions bemoan the lack of guardrails. When somebody within the College Sports Inc. ecosystem says they want guardrails, here's what they really mean. We want guardrails up to the point that they prevent us from doing what we want. We want guardrails that pin down our competition but don't apply to us. In this case now, with Joey, NCAA rules say an athlete like Aguilar cannot spend 4 years in junior college and then 4 more playing Division I ball. An athlete gets 5 years to play 4 full seasons, according to NCAA rules, even if some of those seasons occur in junior college. To which Aguilar's team says, and I'm paraphrasing that here, that's bunk. Aguilar's court filing argues his years in junior college should not count against his opportunity to play 4 NCAA seasons. To review, Aguilar began his college football career in 2019, redshirting for 1 year at City College of San Francisco. Then he spent 3 years at Diablo Valley College. 1 season canceled by COVID before he could play 2 seasons there. Then he played 2 seasons at Appalachian State. Then he spent a few months at UCLA last spring, but he got bumped down the depth chart after UCLA's plunder of Tennessee's Nico Iamaleava. So Aguilar transferred again, and he played his last season at Tennessee, where he led the SEC in passing yards per game. Now he wants an 8th season college, but those pesky NCAA rules won't allow it. The NCAA, according to Aguilar's court complaint, is robbing him of millions that he could earn in NIL compensation this year. Now, put it differently, NCAA rules, if enforceable, would allow redshirt freshman George McIntyre to get first crack at starting for Tennessee instead of sitting behind an 8th-year senior. Depending on how Aguilar's lawsuit goes, perhaps McIntyre should exercise his right of passage and lawyer up. Countersue. You remember that old NCAA commercial in which the narrator said most athletes will go professional in something other than sports? The modern version of that commercial could kind of go something like this. NCAA athletes can earn millions, compete in perpetuity if they hire the right lawyer and score a favorable judge, and then retire without ever going pro in anything other than college sports. Hey son, what do you want to be when you grow up? A retired college quarterback?
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:15. And returning to our front page, the last trail, a run to savor. This is an article regarding the upcoming Olympics in Cortina. Jessie Diggins' final mindset on cross-country ski journey, from Cindy Henderson, columnist of USA Today. Jessie Diggins is the most decorated cross-country skier in U.S. history, but you would never be able to tell if you walked through her home. Diggins' team's sprint win at the 2018 Pyongyang Olympics with teammate Keikan Randall was Team USA's first gold medal in cross-country skiing. Her bronze medal finish in individual sprint at the 2022 Beijing Games made Diggins the first American to win an individual cross-country skiing medal. Her silver in the 30-kilometer freestyle in Beijing completed her set. Yet the hardware that earned her a place in the annals of history are not displayed in her home. That's actually for a very specific reason, Diggins told USA Today Sports ahead of the Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina, the fourth and final games of her prolific career. Diggins' 3 Olympic medals are tucked away in tote bags that make it easy to transport to school visits and show and tells. They are symbols of her success, but Diggins says she rarely looks at them because she doesn't want to become complacent or satisfied. She wants to stay in the moment. I never take them out. They're not on display. It's because I want to wake up every single day and go do something that makes me feel proud of how hard I work, Diggins said. Having Olympic medals, that was 3 different amazing days. But it doesn't give you this hall pass for life. In November, Diggins announced this season would be her last on the trails. She plans to finish her career on home soil at the World Cup Finals in Lake Placid, New York in late March, following the Games. Knowing this will be her last Olympics makes the opportunity even more special, she said. I've tried to see every Olympics just that way, Diggins added. This is the only time that I will ever be here like this, at this point in my life, with these feelings and emotions and this scenario. And so it's so special. I really want to enjoy that. Continuing, becoming an Olympian was always a dream for Diggins. Her passion for skiing dates back to her early days of riding in a backpack on her father's back as her parents skied every weekend. Some of my formative memories are pulling on my dad's hair and yelling at him to go faster, she said with a smile. Diggins instantly fell in love with the speed of downhills, but also appreciated the climbs. It never felt like training or practice, she said. Following along with the cross-country skiing wasn't as easy as it is now, with no social media and her dial-up internet rendered useless in their isolated home in the woods. Her father, Clay Diggins, got creative with film. My dad had VHS tapes of old Olympic races, and he would put it on our old giant TV box in the basement, she said. It was really cool to see people just working really hard racing. I would ask questions and be like, what's an individual start? Why is it important? How do they push themselves so hard? And it was fun to have that moment to connect with my dad and watch the races in that way. Diggins immediately gravitated toward Olympic gold medalist Becky Scott, who became her first ever hero, after Scott made history as the first Canadian to medal in cross-country skiing at the 2002 Salt Lake City Games. It wasn't winning that captivated Diggins, it was Scott's infectious energy. She had the biggest smile, and that was why I liked her. Not because she won, Diggins said. I just loved that she seemed so happy and joyous, and it seemed like, oh, that's someone who loves what they do. Joy is what Diggins chases on the trails, not results, even though success has followed. You can tell how happy she is based on the amount of sparkles on her face. It's a pre-race ritual she's done for as long as she can remember. Putting glitter on and the sparkles before a race. It's a reminder. I get to do this. I love skiing. I love challenging myself. I love going out there and putting it all out there. And I'm doing this for me, she said. I used to feel so much pressure and expectation. I would get so jittery and so nervous that it was stealing the joy out of what I was doing. Well, you can't be too serious when you have glitter all over your face. Expect lots of sparkles. Biodegradable, of course, which matters to Diggins, a climate change advocate at these games. Diggins hasn't decided on a color just yet, although she's been feeling metallics lately and may try to match her racing suit. Who knows? I'm bringing options, she said. Diggins' 2025-26 World Cup season got off to an unexpected start. The reigning World Cup overall champion broke her pinky toe after stubbing it on a couch in October, 100 days out from the Milano Cortina Games. With all the things I do for sport and for training, I am taken down by a piece of living room furniture, she joked. Diggins has fully recovered from what she called a ridiculous injury and hasn't missed a step in her Olympic preparations, which have largely remained the same throughout her 15-year career. She likes to focus on the basics, doing them well, doing them with consistency, and doing it over time. Her process-oriented mindset, in addition to the wonderful team behind her, has helped Diggins avoid burnout and stay grounded. The Olympics is just one more day in that training progression, she said. Same as every other day for the last 15 years. You show up and you do the best you can. And maybe that means you win an Olympic medal, and maybe it doesn't fall that way. And that's okay. You still did the best you could. And you can and should be proud of that. Diggins said her 12-year-old self would be proud of all she's accomplished. So would the 18-year-old dreamer who watched the 2010 Vancouver opening ceremony at a sleepover with her high school teammates. Diggins' childhood dream became a reality when she made her Olympic debut in Sochi in 2014 at the age of 22. It was pretty surreal, almost out-of-body experience, said Diggins, whose best result in 2014 was a 7th place finish in the 4x5K relay. When I was 22, I definitely wasn't going in with any pressure. No one was watching. There was really no expectations settled on my shoulders. And that was a beautiful, wonderful gift. It was about taking it in. And now it's more about the high performance. Mental preparations are as important as physical preparations, a message Diggins wants to spread following an eating disorder and recovery. Through her treatment at the Emily program, Diggins discovered her eating disorder was a coping mechanism for stress and perfectionism she placed on herself. Diggins hopes her vulnerability on and off the snow can inspire others to be brave enough to not only follow their passions but also face their own struggles. It's a legacy Diggins wants to leave behind when she hangs up her skis. I hope I'm remembered not just for the pain cave and the ability to suffer deeply for a team that I love and a sport I care about so much, but for the joy, sense of fun on snow, hard on sleeve racing, deep vulnerability and openness that I've brought to everything I do, she said in her retirement announcement on November 19th.
The NFLPA has no appetite for an 18-game season. 5 States of the Union takeaways from leaders. Nate Davis of USA Today writes this football article. Dateline is San Francisco. The State of the Union is strong. It's a statement modern American presidents almost unfailingly use to describe the country in their annual State of the Union address. As for the state of the NFL Players Union, maybe not so strong right now. The NFL Players Association conducted its annual, the state of its own union on February 3rd in the build-up to Sports Bowl 60. And while the NFLPA certainly has some pointed opinions on issues affecting its membership moving forward, particularly those pertaining to player safety, it's also fairly clear that some of its own systemic issues must be addressed in the near term before it's ready to legislate more existential ones with the league in the future. The current collective bargaining agreement between the players and the National Football League is set to expire following the 2030 season. In the meanwhile, 5 takeaways from Tuesday's news conference, all of them either focuses of the National Football League Players Association, which is heading into its 70th season, or issues it's facing in the near term. Number one, the Players Association has no appetite for 18 regular season games. In a discussion that was largely focused on player safety, David White, Union's interim executive director, made it clear that the players do not want the regular season schedule expanded to an 18th game. Now, the 18th game is not casual for us, said White. It's a very serious issue. It's something that comes out of negotiations, and nothing will move forward until players have the opportunity to account for all of those factors. Take that into consideration, and then, through negotiations, agree or not to the 18th game. But as it stands right now, players have been very clear they don't have any appetite for it. White noted the injuries to star players late in the season. Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, Green Bay Packers defensive end Micah Parsons, going down in December. And in the playoffs, which included San Francisco 49ers tight end George Kittle suffering a ruptured Achilles at Philadelphia, among the reasons that it's not sensible to further add to players' collective load. Now, the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell addressed the possibility of an 18-game season during his February 2nd news conference. We have not had any formal discussions about it, and frankly, very little, if any, informal, Goodell said. I've heard, people talk about it. It's not a given thing that we'll do that. It's not something we assume will happen. It's something we want to talk about with union leadership. Second, players want natural grass playing fields. White said 90% of the players want to play on natural grass surfaces, saying it's common sense that those fields are more forgiving to the body, despite studies that might indicate there's no appreciable difference between artificial turf and the natural variety. He said the union made meaningful progress on field safety as the league implemented more stringent standards. The players want a grass surface, said Chicago Bears linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the NFLPA's president, while adding also means high-quality fields, a not-so-veiled shot at issues that regularly occur with Pittsburgh's grass field. Don't just give us any grass surface now. Number 3, standardized international game travel. While neither White nor Reeves-Maybin seem to push back significantly on the NFL's growing international footprint, they would like to see the league and teams use more consistent travel itineraries, especially as it involves players' rest and recovery during and following overseas trips. This conversation is likely to gain more steam as the league continues to expand its international series, which will include 9 games in 2026, including the first regular season games in both Paris and Australia. It's a seemingly arbitrary approach that clubs take to travel, said White, noting the range of arrival and departure times and the various lodging accommodations and their distance to practice sites teams will choose. Number 4, Levi's Stadium conspiracy. White and Reeves-Maybin were asked about the notion that the proximity of Levi's Stadium, which is going to stage Super Bowl 60 between the Seahawks and the Patriots, to a power plant in Santa Clara, California, contributes to players' injuries. It has been proposed that the seemingly high rate of catastrophic injuries suffered by the 49ers who play at Levi Stadium and train in its shadow are somehow related to the plant and any deleterious effects it supposedly has on players' bodies. But neither man would put much credence into the unsubstantiated theory, citing experts who have debunked it. They are continuing to monitor the situation and say the Niners are looking into it. But neither expects this to become a lingering problem that's substantive in any way. And finally, finding a new NFLPA executive director. While White seemed to effectively convey what's currently at the forefront of the players' agenda, while noting we've stabilized the operations, the fact remains he's likely keeping his chair warm for somebody else, which also means the union is likely to remain in a holding pattern on whatever issues it prioritizes, as well as its strategies as far as future negotiating tactics with the NFL. He was appointed as the interim director after predecessor Lloyd Howell resigned under a cloud of controversy last July. Since then, the union has been focused on rebuilding confidence within its membership. Howell was accused of having competing agendas, including allegedly suppressing an arbitrator's ruling about possible collusion by NFL owners over the compensation of the league's quarterbacks. I think trust has been restored, said White. Reeves-Maben was asking multiple times about the process, and specifically its transparency, when it came to identifying Howell for the role in the first place. He pushed back on the notion that players were not well informed when the time came to vote for Howell or other candidates. He also couldn't provide a timeline for when a replacement will be named, nor whether White will be considered as a candidate.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:32. Favorites to land free agent pitcher Framber Valdez. This article is authored by Bob Nightingale, a columnist for USA Today. Framber Valdez should have been wined, dined, and extolled at a lavish press conference, signed to a contract with enough zeros to assure lifetime wealth and picking out furniture for his new home. Instead, less than 1 week before the start of spring training, he sits unemployed. Valdez, who is 32, the two-time All-Star who has averaged 30 starts a year or the past 4 seasons with Cy Young votes in 3 of them, was arguably the best pitcher on the free agent market. He was projected to be the highest paid player this winter outside his former Houston Astros teammate Kyle Tucker. Yet 3 full months have come and gone, and Valdez continues to wait with questions abound throughout the game. Is he asking for too much money? Are teams concerned about the wear and tear on his arm, pitching 809 innings in the regular season and postseason the last 4 years? Do they wonder whether Valdez intentionally hit his own catcher, Cesar Salazar, in the chest with a 93-mile-per-hour fastball out of frustration in September after giving up a grand slam against the New York Yankees? Whatever the reason, or if it's simply a matter of slow developing market for free agent pitchers, Valdez is easily the best player remaining on the market. With time running out in a survey of scouts, executives, and agents, here are their predictions for the top 6 candidates to sign Valdez. First, the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles remain the heavy favorite to sign Valdez and could turn a fabulous winter into a spectacular one. And let's face it, if they're going to have a real chance to bounce back and win the American League East, they need another frontline starter. Valdez would give them a formidable rotation with Trevor Rogers, Kyle Bradish, Shane Baz, Dean Kremer, and Zach Eflin already in the mix. And remember, they were aggressive in the bidding for Ranger Suarez before he signed a 5-year, $130 million deal with the Boston Red Sox. The Orioles are clearly the team to beat in the Valdez sweepstakes, executives believe. Next, the Toronto Blue Jays. The Orioles' biggest threat to signing Valdez is the Blue Jays. They've had perhaps the best winter of any team in baseball, spending $337 million to give them every chance for a return trip to the World Series. So why not push it closer to $500 million? Excuse me. If they sign Valdez, they will have locked up the top 2 starters on the market, having already signed Dylan Cease to a 7-year, $210 million contract. They would be even further flush with starters with Valdez, Cease, Kevin Gausman, Sean Bieber, Trey Yesavage, Cody Ponce, and Jose Barrios. Considering that Gausman and Bieber are free agents after the 2026 season, the signing of Valdez makes perfect sense. Besides, if they had $350 million to sign Kyle Tucker before he went to the Dodgers, why not give up a chunk of that to Valdez? San Diego Padres. They haven't done anything all winter besides bringing back Michael King and signing Korean infielder Sung-Mun Song, and may have trouble enough keeping up with the San Francisco Giants, let alone the Dodgers. The signing of Valdez could save the offseason. Financial constraints and an impending sale have hindered them. But if Yu Darvish walks away from the $43 million he's owed, including $16 million this season, the Padres could use it to find a creative way of bringing in Valdez. It would be similar to their deal a year ago with free agent Nick Pivetta, when he was left stranded on the free agent market, giving him an opt-out after 2 seasons. The Padres are a long shot compared to the Orioles and Blue Jays' chances. But with GM A.J. Preller at the helm, you can never rule anything out. Chicago Cubs. You want the Cubs fan to lose their minds after their fine winter? Go ahead and sign Valdez, giving them a team that could not only win the National League Central Division, but perhaps challenge the mighty Dodgers. The Cubs, who already dropped $175 million with the Alex Bregman signing, would have a sensational rotation of Justin Steele when he returns in the second half, Edward Cabrera, Matthew Boyd, Cade Horton, Shota Imanaga, and Jameson Taillon in the mix for starts. The Cubs, who have been engaged in talks with fellow free agent Zach Gallen, will need another frontline starter in a year anyways, with Boyd, Taillon, and Imanaga all free agents after the 2026 season. The Detroit Tigers. Can you imagine a rotation with Tarek, Skubal, and Valdez as your 1-2 punch? It would bring back memories when Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer were leading the Tigers' powerful rotation during their glory days. While it may seem to be far-fetched, the Tigers have to face reality too. They are not going to fork out $400 million and sign Skubal when he hits free agency in 10 months. They will have a gaping hole in the rotation. So why not be proactive and grab his replacement a year early? This would give them a rotation of Skubal, Valdez, Jack Flaherty, Casey Mize, Reese Olson, and Drew Anderson to start 2026. They would have the team built for a deep October run. Who says no? And finally, the Milwaukee Brewers. We get it. If you can't afford to keep Freddie Peralta, why not turn around and spend money for Valdez? Yet the Peralta trade was simply acknowledging they couldn't keep him a year from now. Considering the Brewers have spent only $1.25 million in free agency this winter, and the fans are loudly grumbling about losing Peralta, why not get them feeling as if you're giving away free beer and cheese curds at all home games? The Brewers privately say they still are interested in signing a free agent pitcher. They could shoot for the sun and leave the Cubs cursing under their breath.
The Clippers trade Harden to the Cavs for Garland. Marcus Smith writes this very short article. The Los Angeles Clippers and the Cleveland Cavaliers agreed to a trade that would send former MVP James Harden to Cleveland, while Darius Garland heads to Southern California. The trade on Tuesday, February the 3rd, was first reported by ESPN's Shams Charania. Cleveland becomes the 6th team in Harden's 17-year career. Harden, who averages 25.4 points, 8.1 assists, and 4.8 rebounds, gives Cleveland another scoring option for the remainder of the regular season. After all, he is number 9 all-time in NBA scoring history with 28,805 points. For what it's worth, he's number 12 all-time in assists. The Cavaliers acquire a combo guard in Harden who can play shooting guard and run a team as a point guard. He has played with superstars his entire career and has had success, especially in the regular season. Having played with an array of stars like Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and Chris Paul throughout his 17-year NBA career, he should have no issue teaming with Cavaliers star Donovan Mitchell. Harden, who stands at 6'5", 220 pounds, gives Cleveland more size in its backcourt, a difference from Garland, 6'1", 192-pound frame. He should fit right in with Cleveland, who has been looking for a consistent secondary scorer after Mitchell. They happen to get one of the best offensive players in the game's history. Harden joins the team as someone who controls an offense. He's a constant scoring threat, whether via penetration or knocking down perimeter shots. He's second all-time in NBA history with 3,310 three-pointers made. Harden has been successful in his career when paired with other shooters, or an athletic big who can set screens and finish above the rim, an archetype that matches both Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. Now, with the Cavaliers sitting at number 5 in the Eastern Conference standings with a 30-21 record, Harden's addition gives them somebody who can add a veteran presence and playoff experience. On the receiving end of the trade are the Clippers, who not only get a scorer at the point guard right after losing one, but they also get younger in the process. Garland, who turned 26 in January, gives the team in Inglewood an 18-point-per-game scorer who turns out nearly 7 assists per game this season. The Clippers started the season with a 6-21 record by December 18 and looked like they were headed toward the lottery with their Oklahoma City Thunder owner owning the pick. But since then, the Clippers have turned their season around, having won 17 out of the last 22 games, and they now sit at the number 9 spot in the Western Conference standings, which would qualify them for an NBA play-in tournament berth. Garland can help recently named All-Star Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers creep into a potential playoff berth by reaching the number 6 spot, or even better. They have a long way to go, as they stand 7 games behind the number 6 best Minnesota Timberwolves, but it's not entirely impossible. The Kawhi Leonard era isn't over just yet with the Clippers. This is just the latest iteration. From Paul George to Harden, now Garland attempts to help bring the Clippers over the hump and a chance to make and win their first ever NBA championship.
Enjoy Scotty Scheffler's greatness and respect it. From Bob McManaman, a columnist for the Arizona Republic and also the USA Today Network. Everybody loves a winner. The only bad thing about it, sometimes if you win too much, people tend to get sick of it. Welcome to the wacky United States, where we frequently tend to tear down all that is great, even in sports. A generation of sports fans cheered and then jeered dynasties such as the NBA's Boston Celtics and Major League Baseball's New York Yankees. As a nation, we've been guilty of doing the same to the NFL's New England Patriots, featuring Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and more recently the free-spending Los Angeles Dodgers, thanks to no real hard salary cap in baseball. But what about golf and the special magic and dominance being displayed by the world's number 1 ranked player, Scotty Scheffler? Upon joining Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods as the only men to have won 20 PGA Tour titles and 4 major championships before turning 30, are we about to turn on Scheffler too? Please, let's not. Scheffler's sensational success is truly just beginning, as he returns this week to the WM Phoenix Open at Scottsdale, TPC, where he earned his first PGA Tour title in 2022. We should embrace what he's already accomplished and be eager to watch how much more he can conquer. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:45. Continuing, I think it's great for golf, and the rest of the PGA Tour for that matter. It only improves the game when everyone is chasing greatness. I think it is. CBS golf analyst Colt Canast, a former PGA Tour pro, told me during a phone interview on January 26th, a day after Scheffler won the American Express tournament in La Quinta, California. We look back over golf history, and when Jack Nicklaus was dominating, it was great for the game. What Tiger Woods did changed the game forever. Scotty Scheffler. It's hard to compare him to Tiger Woods, even though we want to. But that's the line, right? That's the gold standard. Tiger Woods. And to see what Scotty's doing now is just so impressive. I think it's great. Sports fans appreciate greatness, and Scotty is going to end up being one of the greatest guys to ever play the game. So I think it's awesome for the golf. It's awesome for fans. It's awesome for players. Knaus caught himself and explained it's probably not really that awesome for Scheffler's peers because they can't beat him. But it does show them, he said, what level they need to get to if they want to be considered one of the best. Knaus, to his 40, has some personal insight into Scheffler's rise to fame. He first met the now 29-year-old golfer when Scotty was just 6 years old. That's when Scheffler's parents moved the family from New Jersey to Dallas and borrowed $50,000 to join Royal Oaks Country Club. Scheffler was a prodigy, and he and Knaus received tutelage there under instructor Randy Smith. From the very beginning, Knaus said he could tell Scheffler was bound for greatness. He was different. You could see it. He was just built different. Look at him now. The best ball striker in golf has now become one of the most savage putters in the game, turning what once was considered a weakness into a legitimate strength. 9 of his 20 wins have been by 4 or more strokes. Scheffler's victory in the Amex vaulted his career earnings to more than $100 million, something previously accomplished by Tiger and Rory McIlroy. He's won 50% of the tournaments he has played in since last May, and is coming off a 6-win campaign in 2025 that included 12 top 5 finishes and 17 top 10s without missing a cut in 20 total starts. Oh, and he's won the Phoenix Open twice with 4 top 10s in 6 appearances, and will be the favorite to win it this year when first-round play begins on Thursday, February the 5th, today. Is he Tiger Woods? No. But Scheffler has reached a Tiger-type status, even though his 20 career wins are far from Woods' 82 all-time victories, tied for the most in history with Sam Snead. He's 62 behind, Knaus said. Will he get there? Who knows? You never know what could happen. I think it would be very hard for him to get to 82 wins. Oh, one, he doesn't play a ton every single season, but there's no telling. America loves a winner until it doesn't. I don't know how you can not like Scotty Scheffler, Knaus says. I mean, he's one of the humblest, nicest guys there is. That's probably the one thing, in my opinion, where he gets a little underappreciated. Knowing Scheffler as well as he does, Knaus wonders only how long Scheffler will continue to chase greatness. He notes that Scheffler is a family man, adding, golf is what he does. It's not who he is. I hope it doesn't happen, Knaus continued. But there's a part of me that can say, you know what? When he turns 40 years old, he could be. I am done. I'm done with this traveling. I've got a great career, and I want to be home with my family. I hope it doesn't happen because that would suck for golf. But at the same time, just knowing him, yeah, he could be very satisfied, and 7, 8, 9 years from now, he could possibly walk away from the game. Would anyone even dare to turn on him then?
Moving into the entertainment section, Glitter and Gold shines as an Olympics primer. Under the category of streaming, Brian Alexander of USA Today writes, the ice dancing heated rivalry is just getting started. So, kickstart your next Winter Olympics obsession with Netflix's Glitter and Gold. The 4-part series, streaming now, offers a soap operatic look at the top 3 couples, including married Americans Madison Chock and Evan Bates, as they battle for a place on the medal podium at the 2026 Winter Games, which start tomorrow. Director Katie Walsh, Simone Biles Rising, follows the teams for 10 challenging pre-Olympic months, right up to December's Grand Prix final. The binge-worthy series sets up in the Olympics as almost a series finale. People really lean into ice dancing because of the drama, the storytelling on ice, and also these partnerships. Walsh tells USA Today, the relationships at the cornerstones of these partnerships creates the intrigue and connect us. We can all relate to being intrinsically tied to another person to succeed. So here's a taste of the drama. The American team, known as Chuck and Bates, or Maddie and Evan, will win your heart with the married duo's makeup routine performances, with both vying for minor space, or when they walk their two toy poodles. Their lives are completely interwoven. Everything they do is shared, Walsh says. They're the real deal, a wonderful couple. A wipeout led to the duo's disappointing fourth-place finish in the 2022 Beijing Olympics. While the U.S. team took gold, the couple still has trouble discussing their paired result. However, the three-time reigning World Figure Skating Championship winners ride in as favorites. Beyond the wildly competitive field, another potential speed bump throughout the series is Chuck's insistence on a flowing matador skirt for the bullfighting theme routine. The frequently altered skirt has led to ice mishaps when the material gets caught in Bates' skates. It really created a line of tension for them and us as viewers. Even I'm holding my breath and covering my eyes, says Walsh. I was watching them in early January after filming ended, and it seemed like they had it under control. But, it's a variable. Next, we have Piper Giles and Paul Poirier, best friends representing Canada. Now, Canada's Piper Giles and Paul Poirier enter their third Winter Olympics in search of the first medal. Giles, who previously competed for the United States before receiving Canadian citizenship, to be paired with Poirier, deals with her mother's death, her own ovarian cancer battle in 2023 at age 31. First, her mom passes away from cancer, and then Piper's diagnosed with cancer on her birthday, Walsh says. Giles is now cancer-free, competing with Poirier, who publicly came out as gay in 2021, before the Beijing Olympics. They are such supportive friends with each other, and Piper stood by Paul when he needed time off to fully be himself on the ice, Walsh said. You see that friendship unfold even further. Glitter and Gold features a tearful, fully mic'd moment as the duo deal with the heartbreak of bad scores at a pivotal event. It's wonderful that they let us into that moment filled with disappointment, because it's such a true moment and a reflection of them as people, Walsh says. And then finally we have Beaudry and Cizeron, the wild card couple. Now, just when it seemed like the emerging U.S. and Canadian teams would be battling for 2026 gold, a new ice dancing force entered from France. Laurence Fournier Beaudry, the one-time partner of Nikolai Sorensen, teamed up with previously retired Guillaume Cizeron, considered one of the greatest ice dancers of all time. In the series, the duo tried to come together as a team in less than a year before the Olympics. To have a new team vying for a medal, much less a gold medal, in a sport with a certain degree of predictability is completely unprecedented, Walsh says. I don't see this happening again, ever, but it certainly shakes up the standings here. Beaudry and Cizeron deal with miscues, such as picking Depeche Mode's song Personal Jesus for a competition with 90s music, and having to suddenly change their music after realizing the song was released in 1989. There also are wardrobe malfunctions, as Beaudry's skirt leads to a fall during a key competition. Meanwhile, Jock and Evans rise to the couple challenges in the series. They are forced to step up their game really early on, Walsh says. So, we'll see what happens in Milan. Whichever couple ultimately steps onto the Olympics podium, glitter and gold is the perfect Olympics primer. So when you watch the Olympics, you are fully invested in these 6 people and these 3 teams, Walsh says. Then hopefully you're happy, no matter what happens.
From the Lifeline, Making Waves, Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson's daytime talk show is coming to an end after 7 seasons. The singer-turned-host confirmed the end of the Kelly Clarkson Show in an Instagram post on February the 2nd, telling fans it was not an easy decision, but stepping away from the daily schedule will allow me to prioritize my kids, which feels necessary and right for this chapter of our lives. A final date for the show, which premiered in September of 2019, has not been announced, but NBC Universal said episodes will air through the fall 2026 with guest hosts. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Thursday, February the 5th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ken Drost?
and Jim Duffy.
Boy, we didn't even...
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.